Good evening, I'm Jose Cardenas. President Barack Obama gives millions of undocumented immigrants protection from deportation. Is the executive order even legal? Who is covered and who isn't? The president laid out his immigration plan to the nation, but the fight is far from over. All this coming up right now on Horizonte.
Funding for Horizonte is made possible by contributions by the Friends of Eight, members of your Arizona PBS station.
Thank you for joining us. President Obama issued an executive order last Thursday that temporarily protects millions of undocumented immigrants from deportation, disappoints others who aren't covered, and leaves Republicans divided on what to do about it. We'll discuss all of that in a moment, but first, the day after his address, President Obama launched an effort to win support for his immigration move in Las Vegas.
And what we have to do is be honest that tracking down, rounding up, and deporting millions of people is not realistic. That's not who we are. Most undocumented immigrants are good, decent people. They have been here for a long time.
We will not stand idle as the president undermines the rule of law in our country and places lives at risk. We'll listen to the American people, we'll work with our members, and we will work to protect the Constitution of the United States.
Joining us to talk about President Obama's executive action on immigration, Petra Falcon, Executive Director for Promise Arizona, Rudy Espino, Associate Professor with Arizona State University School of Politics and Global Studies, Danny Ortega, Attorney and past Chairman for the National Council of La Raza, and Phil Austin, Attorney and Chairman for the East Valley Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Petra, I want to begin with you. Can you just briefly outline what's covered and what's not, who's covered and who's not by this executive order?
Well, some very, very grateful people. So that the parents of U.S. citizen children of whatever age and lawful permanent residents who have been in the United States since January 1 of 2010 are eligible. And they will get a 3-year temporary halt to their potential of deportations. And the other piece that's also significant is that the president eliminated the age the tab for dreamers or soñadores for DACA, or previously DACA recipients. And so anyone who's been here since January 1, 2010, and again, without an age limit will be able to apply and get the other 3-year permit.
And the January 1, 2010 for DACA students actually is also a change, right?
It's a change. It was 2007. It was June 2007. So it's significant. So between those two constituencies, it could be close to 4.5 million people.
Now, it leaves out, though, the parents of DACA students.
It's left out for now, the parents of, undocumented parents of soñadores or of DACA recipients.
Danny, did it go far enough?
No, it didn't go far enough. When you looked at the estimates that were made with regard to the proposal that was made by the U.S. Senate, it was somewhere in the area of 7 to 8 million people that would be eligible for some sort of relief back then, some permanent legal residence. It didn't go far enough, but my position on this right now is that it's a good step forward. 5 million people is a lot of people say. We're talking about reprieve from deportation for a significant number of people, and we're glad for them. They have at least 3 years to enjoy this status. As it relates to the others, enforcement is going to be ramped up. So it's not like they're going to back off. It's going to be ramped up. It's our hope that this action taken by the president will get Congress to move on something that's more permanent and something that's, that they believe is within the confines of the law or the Constitution. So on the one hand, we're happy for those who will benefit. On the other, we got to keep fighting for those that we want to be covered. And we never expected, Jose, under any plan that the Congress may have sent to the president, that any more than 8 million people would have benefited. We would instead have had 3 or 4 million people that wouldn't have.
Well, I want to talk about the legality of it, and particularly get your thoughts on that, Phil. But Rudy, a little bit on the politics, and we're going to be talking a lot about politics tonight. But why did the president wait? I mean, there are these statements that he did so because of fear of impact on the election. it turns out not to have been to his advantage to have waited. Do you think it was a mistake?
No. Well, look, he's not running again. And I think it's a game changer for the Democratic Party. It puts the ball in the Republican court.
Well, why not do it before the elections?
Well, you have to have Republicans debate this. And, 2014, we already had the elections. Latino voters already have been disappointed with the Democratic Party. And now you have this change with respect to the Democratic Party's position on immigration reform. Now the Republican Party has to debate this. And you're going to see a lot of debate in the House, especially in the Senate, with potential presidential candidates within the Republican primary fighting for this position, because you have to consider what Latino voters want, especially in battleground states. We're talking about Colorado, Nevada. It's no surprise that President Obama, like when he pushed for this, he made a speech in Nevada, right? This is a battleground state, and he's putting the ball in the Republicans' court.
Petra, it seems that the waiting didn't seem to do the president much good in terms of the midterms. Do you think that's because Latinos didn't turn out to support him?
I think so. I mean, I think they're both the fact that whether it's the Democratic Party or the candidates that were out there didn't really have a Latino agenda, but by and large, people kept hearing that they were going to get something for immigrants in this country, and nothing ever happened. We've been waiting for years and no action, and especially because there's been a bill in Senate for over a year, and the House of Representatives never took that up. And I would agree with Rudy, the Republicans have a lot of talking to do, because if you were to put a bill in front of the House of Representatives, it would pass right now. So right now, they've got to get their house in order to move forward.
Phil, I don't think anybody could question your support for immigration reform, but you think it was a mistake for the president to have issued the executive order.
Well, I'm concerned because in our country, and that which differentiates our country is our constitutional government, the three branches of government, and that fine balance that between those two. And I think in our history, we've never been successful in ruling unilaterally or through a knee-jerk reaction. What our system provides for, and which is the envy of the world, is a process by which it could be long and it could be frustrating, but what lasts and inures to the benefit of all is a process where we pass through our representatives the idea, let it be debated, let it be argued about, and then let pass out of that into the other checks and balances in the executive and the judicial, so that out of that process, we have developed laws that are in envy of the world. To short circuit it because of a frustration, which I share along with everyone else, undermines that system. In case in point, creates concern about the unilateral action of the executive. For example, his action, he ordered the prohibition of deportation of certain immigrants. What's to stop the next president from ordering the deportation? The only thing that's going to stop them is a Congress or a court who he is short-circuited by this action.
So Phil, it sounds like you're talking a little bit of what David Brooks of the New York Times was saying, and that is restoring confidence in government, and this diminishes it. But what about the legality of it? Do you think what the president did was unconstitutional?
Well, I think his action has been compared to the action of previous Republican presidents who, through executive orders, have affected the immigration. I argue in those cases that what those presidents did was work off the basis of the IRCA law passed in 1986 and clarify very vague issues there. They use the executive order. The executive order was founded upon the legislation that was passed by Congress, not interposed instead of action by Congress.
Danny, that sounds like a reasonable distinction. Do you agree with that?
No, I don't agree. First of all, Jose, you can have 5 constitutional scholars in this room, who have no political axe to grind, and I think you're going to find that they're all going to agree that what the president did was constitutional. Most of the articles that are being written today about this, when Republicans and Democrats aren't involved, is that within the Constitution, that executive action isn't defined in a way that limits the president to do what this president did and what other presidents have done when they've taken executive action. Whose job is it but none other than the executive side of the aisle? And I respect Phil's argument about the three branches of government, but it is the executive branch of government that actually executes the issues that are confronting us with regard to immigration over at the Department of Homeland Security and Department of Justice. And so it's clearly within his realm. I think it's ultimately going to be found constitutional, but we're talking about something bigger in terms of what we represent to the rest of the world and a democracy. What about the moral imperative that comes from the lack of the U.S. House of Representatives to act on a very important issue where millions and millions of lives are at stake and are living in fear that their families are going to be separated and that they're going to be sent back to their home country after having lived here for so long. They have U.S. citizen children and legal residents. I mean, look, we can get into the legalities of this fairly easy, but the moral imperative to do something and to get Congress to act, and I think this is what's going to do it, Jose.
Rudy, you've already touched a little bit on the politics of it, but what reason do we have to believe that this sets the stage anymore? You described it that way, as setting the stage for the Republicans to act. Then the Senate bill that was passed, bipartisan, support from the president, that went to the House and it just died there. Why do you think it would be any different this time around?
Well, presidential election, presidential cycle in 2016.
Well, so does that mean you don't expect anything to happen in the next 2 years?
Well, I expect that anybody that wants to run for president within the Republican primary has to take a position that's further to the left than what I would call the Tea Party caucus on immigration reform. If you want to be courting that Latino vote in states that matter, Colorado, New Mexico, Nevada, Florida, even North Carolina, you cannot be that far to the right. You cannot be opposing what President Obama did. And I appreciate what my colleagues brought up about the three branches of government. I tell my students it's important to pay
you're
attention.
the political science professor.
Yeah, pay attention to Congress and the executive branch, but we also have to now pay attention to what the judicial branch is going to say on this, because now you're going to see Republican lawsuits. We already have a lawsuit from our own sheriff here in Maricopa County against this executive action. And so what position are the courts going to take on this is, I think, another interesting thing to be paying attention to.
Petra, any concern that this has poisoned the well and that because of it, something that might have happened in the next 2 years isn't going to happen?
Well, I do want to bring it back to this lackluster midterm elections, and the fact that people aren't voting is because there is this paralyzation in Congress, right? There's nothing moving forward. And I think what people do see with what the president did was two things: progress and something dealing with people. Progress in the sense is that we're moving forward. We can't move backwards. I don't know that people want to deport 11 million people, and with 4 to 5 million people getting some kind of relief, their lives are moving forward. People aren't going to want to reverse that. And this is ultimately what you were saying, Danny, about people who have been contributing to this country. We're dealing with families who are mixed status families. They already have roots here. The minimum time that these families have been here is 12 years. They've already been here over a decade. So this is about our being a nation of immigrants, being a nation of values, and that we've got to move forward. We've been stuck for too long, and that's what I think our politics needs to get back to, what's important to people.
Well, say
I
that's
think,
why.
I think what's important here, though, is that once you give a benefit, it's hard to take it back. I think that when we were in the limbo that we were in the last national election, which was, I promise you immigration reform, okay? That's not going to be it. The issue is going to be, what are you going to do with the executive order that President Obama signed on deferred action? Are Republicans going to be saying, I'm going to make sure that every one of those people who registered for that program get deported? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It would be a disaster for the Republican Party. So I think the president has really just, checkmate on that issue.
Why didn't he do this before the midterm election?
Well, I think that more than anything else, it was the politics of the Democratic Party and Democratic candidates who believed they were going to be affected by it. I think now, after the fact, we'll look at it and say, it really didn't affect you in the way you thought it did. The bottom line is that turnout was determined by the amount of money that was spent in every state, particularly by the right, and particularly by those who supported Republican candidates. And so, though I disagreed with the president in holding off for the same reasons that I talked about earlier, from a practical political standpoint, he was just getting too much pressure from his own party and by the candidate Democratic Party to do that, and he thought he should wait because he didn't want to turn his party and his people against him by doing it before.
Would it have made a
as
difference,
opposed to after. It wouldn't have made a difference to the election, but it would have made a difference to the kind of acceptance that it got by the side that his base, as opposed to before.
Phil.
Yeah, I think we have to go back to the need for credibility in the system and the process. We understand that when legislation or when laws are passed, that there's no general consensus or unanimity about it. There's always those who object or oppose. But what we have here is a system that says, yeah, we're going to have some differences, but as long as those ideas are debated, are put out into the public, and voted by our representatives, they have validity, and we can move on even though we disagree. His actions kind of short-circuit that and cause a kind of rise in concern about the process. He himself admitted that when he's earlier indicated that he wouldn't act as a dictator or an emperor.
But other presidents have used executive order.
Okay, so he realized there was some concern about that himself, and now he's changed.
On the point about debate, though, Speaker Boehner didn't allow the Senate bill to come up for a straight up or down vote. I mean, isn't that also inconsistent with the principles?
Let's go
we're
back
talking
to, I was head of the Civil Rights Division and involved in civil rights laws. The first civil rights laws were initiated or introduced in the 50s. But they didn't pass. The Civil Rights Act didn't pass till 1964. After a lot of debate, after a lot of change, the country had to change. To short circuit it without that kind of debate. And I'm here probably because I was involved in a rally that was supported across the country by hundreds of conservative executives who've called upon the Republican Congress to act, saying we must act. And that kind of pressure, I think, will make, immigration law in the near future a reality. But the action of the president, in my opinion, has impeded that. Will it stop it? I don't think so, because there is such a widespread support for it growing even in Republican circles. I don't have to remind everybody that the two leaders in the Senate for the Senate version of the bills were Republicans Flake and McCain. So there is a large constituency in the Republican Party who wants to change, but again, I think short-circuiting it creates some obstacles, the overwhelming obstacles. Hope not, we're going to push for it, but through the Congress and to get the presidents, and for sure then we'll have the judiciary support it.
So Rudy, speaking of Senator Flake, he has proposed what some see as one response that the Republicans can make versus proposals to just simply defund the system that would allow the implementation of the president's executive order. Senator Flake is talking about sending up a series of immigration bills. The first ones being ones that the president has otherwise indicated aren't that palatable to him. What do you think of that strategy?
I don't think it's going to gain much traction. Yes, Congress controls the power of the purse. I don't see Congress defunding any of the programs that they're threatening to cut. Secondly, with respect to this piecemeal approach, President Obama, Democrats are opposed to it. And I do not see that getting any traction for that reason. Yes, Democrats lost control of the Senate, but they still have the filibuster. The filibuster still exists. And for Democrats that care about this issue, they can threaten the filibuster and just shut that down right now. And that's what I see probably taking place in the Senate.
Danny, is defunding an empty threat?
Yeah, a very empty threat. The bottom line is that the country is angry enough at Congress. So let's talk about Democrats or Republicans. I think angry enough at Congress about what happened last time that I think they got the message clear. I mean, some of your prominent Republican leaders are saying no, that's not an option. the Tea Party candidates, the people who are to the extreme right, clearly their voices are being heard on the defunding. I just don't think it's realistic. I think that to take the issue of just immigration to defund the government is not enough, and I think would be dangerous to the Republican Party.
Petra, as Phil indicated, a lot of business groups have been very strong in their support of immigration reform. They've expressed concerns. One of the concerns expressed by some of them is it creates even more ambiguity. So what do you do with an employee you've had for many years who comes forward and says, you know, I want to get straight with the law. I've been working under an assumed identity.
Well, that's going to be part of the work that community groups and the legal community and people who are going to be impacted need to really just work together. Because part of the requisite is that you do a background check, so everything is going to come out, and you do have to come forward and do your taxes. So that means that there will be a lot of tax preparation events going on in the community, a lot of partnering up. With
5 years, right?
Yeah,
Petra?
5 years.
of
5
taxes.
years of taxes. But that 2 years ago, when DACA was also implemented, we did a lot of work in the community to make sure that these young people were doing these applications correctly. And so the first question, one of the concerns from the legal community, is that the correct people are applying. So that there's going to be a lot of work in Arizona. There might be up to 200,000 people who will fall under both of these two measures.
Now, there have been problems in the past with people, for example, the notarios, who really aren't lawyers in Arizona, taking advantage of people thinking that they're like the notarios in Latin America, where they can practice law. Any concerns from anybody about people taking advantage of those who want to get this DACA status, or DAPA, as it's called?
I do, because I think part of, again, the process of such a step as was taken is, again, the lack of clarification that occurs during the debate. And yes, in the past we've seen these actions, as well as who qualifies and who's not, is a question, again, that lay people have to deal with, that lawyers can't even answer those questions right now. And so part of the beauty of the process of going through the process where our representatives debate and argue is that clarification occurs that allows and input from businesses who are affected, from community groups who are affected, all input the process. And what comes out of there is a process that's refined because of the debate.
Danny, quickly, because I want to move on to
Yeah,
another topic.
the most important thing is that we've got to inform or educate the community about those that are eligible to try to avoid some of the fraud. But the concerns not only go with fraud for people taking money from people who don't qualify, but it's also, even if you get lawyers who get into this business now because they see the money, there are who are incompetent and who've never done this before. So I think that we have to be concerned on two fronts, and we have to take the onus to educate the people about the potential for fraud and who's committing it.
So let's talk quickly about the impact in Arizona. We got a decision this week from the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. Well, they basically denied the request for en banc review of the order by the Ninth Circuit that said the governor has to allow driver's licenses for the DACA kids. Presumably the state's, even with its new governor, is going to continue to fight that battle. So do we expect any immediate impact in Arizona?
Well, first of all, I think that Governor Ducey is going to stay true to his position in the campaign that he supported Governor Brewer's position in not issuing driver's licenses to DACA recipients or who were found eligible. There's a process here where we have the Court of Appeals saying you have to issue driver's licenses to DACA. I think it follows consistently that we must also issue to the parents of U.S. citizen children who are approved under this new Deferred Action Program. But I think the politics is going to be front and center because the likelihood is that the governor's office or the state of Arizona will say we're going to appeal the decision from the Court of Appeals and leave things in limbo, and you're going to have Governor Ducey coming forward and saying, I made a promise. I said I supported what Governor Brewer did, and I'm going to follow through on that.
Rudy, we've only got a minute left. Does this make it harder for Ducey to take a different course? The fact that the president has now issued an order that expands the number of people who might otherwise be eligible for driver's licenses?
Yeah, I think it does, and not only for Ducey, but for other Republican governors out there. There's a lot of clarification that is going to be needed that's going to be decided by the judicial branch, district courts, appellate courts. It might go all the way to the Supreme Court. But yeah, I disagree with my colleague Phil a little
You're going
bit.
to have to make it short because we only got about 20 seconds.
Just in terms of the debate leading to clarification, there's a lot of things that Congress gives us that is very unclear. And this is where I do think the judicial branch is going to have to step in.
So on that note of lack of clarity, we'll end the discussion. You guys have been great and very clear, I think, in your positions, and thank you for joining us on Horizonte to talk about them.
Thank you.
And remember, if you want to watch this show again or previous episodes and also find out what's going up on the show, just go to our website, azpbs.org, and click on Horizonte. And that's our show for tonight from all of us here at 8 in Horizonte. Thanks for watching. I'm Jose Cardenas. Have a good evening.
Funding for Horizonte is made possible by contributions by the Friends of 8, members of your Arizona PBS station.